Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, it's so vitally important to support the jobs that we don't even know about or even understand sometimes when it comes to filmmaking and TV shows. And you know, if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with Once Warren. Again, one of those things you don't understand but love to support, and I appreciate you for it. And like I said, if you are within the sound of my voice and you're listening, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Gives you a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook. We're on the X, formerly known as Twitter. We're on Instagram. Or is it just called Meta now? I don't even know. But we're also on TikTok, we're on Letterboxd, and we're probably at a few other places too. At where else would we be? We're at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So do us that kindness and pay us a visit. Once more on this episode, we are diving into the world of production design with two Emmy-nominated production designers on the last and epic season of Ted Lasso, which is available on your favorite streaming service, Apple TV+. As I've always said, if you haven't signed up for Apple TV Plus, what are you waiting for? Go do it now. It's really a great service with tons and tons of fantastic shows, much like Ted Lasso. And in advance of that, well, not in advance of that, but we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with two of the key members of the team behind the scenes on Ted Lasso. We talked to the production designer, the one and only Paul Cripps, who is rocking his third Emmy nomination for the show. But also we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with set decorator Kate Goodman, and we dived into the the nature of working on a show like this and what they have to do and sort of the ins and outs and the unique nature of it all. And I mean, obviously, they're up for some of the 21 Emmys that Ted Lasso is up for this year. And they're just, again, it's the kind these jobs add so much to shows like Ted Lasso, and it's just an important thing to celebrate. But as always, if you haven't seen Ted Lasso, if you haven't signed up for Apple TV Plus, go do it now. But first, enjoy our talk with production designer Paul Cripps and set decorator Kate Goodman for a little bit of insight behind the scenes on your favorite show, because quite frankly, it's a darn good conversation. All right, well, Paul, Kate, obviously, first off, just thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this.
It's our pleasure.
No, I mean, obviously, congrats on your work on the show. I mean, it's fantastic. And I mean, this might be a bit of a loaded question, but Paul, I'm going to start with you first, just because whenever I see the title production designer, I always think I know what it means, but I've never actually asked the sort of specific minutia of what your job entails.
That's a very simple question with a very long answer. Basically, I'm responsible for everything, for the look of everything that's on the screen that isn't the actors. That's the simple answer. But I'm kind of in charge of sets and the look of locations, not necessarily location finding it or but how it's dressed, how it looks, cars, graphics, props, furniture. And then within my team, I have a whole plethora of people who look after those elements for me. So Kate will do all the furniture and dressing. But I'm responsible for working with the director and the director of photography to make sure that the look of the whole show is correct, both period correct or contemporary correct, and visually it works and flows. That's my job.
Okay, so then I guess this is a question for both of you then. Like on a show like this, which is obviously present day, soccer club, the whole 9 yards,
is that more of a challenge to dress and set up than, say, a period piece or something that's pure fiction? Because I mean, again, we're dealing with something that is at least sort of adjacent to the real world, as it were. You know what I mean?
I would say I'll speak for myself. I'll let Kate answer as well. But for myself, I often think contemporary is harder because we all know contemporary so well.
Right.
If you get something wrong, like if you create an app for a phone and people just don't believe it, you know, because people are so media savvy and visual savvy, you know, that contemporary stuff, they will immediately think, yeah, this looks a bit fake. So whilst period, I think you're limited to what you can either build or find from the period, but also there are only few people who are real experts on that period who would know whether that is, you know, correct. Whilst contemporary, everybody's an expert. You know, everybody's an expert on, if you're a football fan, you're an expert on everything we do in the show. So I think it's hard. Kate, I'll let you answer.
I'm going the opposite. I'm going to say it's easier, but that is purely because you have the freedom to be able to choose what you want in terms of variety. You know, if you want to put something that is in from the 1950s, it's not out of place. You know, you can put in anything you want and it's not necessarily wrong. And in terms of choice, you've got everything. Whereas periods, you know, going the opposite way to Paul is you want to get it correct, and it's a lot harder to find the right piece that might be right for a set, you know, that is also correct for that period. So yeah, I'll go the opposite way, but no, I find contemporary easier, I think, because the choice you have is much greater.
No, but I mean, that's interesting because I mean, just one of my favorite scenes from the whole show, just when they're playing darts in the pub and just sort of like generally you would think, oh, to dress a pub is easy, but it's like, no, you've got to, everything that these people do is very specific and put in very specific things. Like, I'm kind of curious, when you're doing something contemporary, does it allow for, I guess, individual flair on your ends, or is it just a question of sort of fitting the grander vision of the show?
Oh, it definitely allows for our own kind of flair to come through. And I think, you know, it's easier for some characters than others. It's easier for us to channel Keeley because we can have a lot of fun with that character and we can be slightly outrageous. But I think it's definitely, but even on a period show, I think you can allow your character or your choice and your taste to come through in a period show as well. Kate?
So much of our job is getting into the character space. So almost, you know, I find when I'm propping for different sets, you know, I sort of change headspaces as to who I am. So, you know, there's things that I'm looking at now, which I looked at on Ted, which I'm sort of like, oh, it wouldn't be right at all. But for Ted, when I walked in and I looked at it, I was like, it's perfect. So you sort of change, you know, how you sort of look at things.
Like method designing. It's like method design. You try and think into the character as to, if you went to a furniture shop, what would the character choose rather than you? But you can also allow yourself to let that character be a bit stylish in your own way or in a different way or in Kate's way or whatever, you know.
How much back and forth do you both have with the actors when you're doing stuff like this? I mean, I can imagine particularly for something like Ted's Office, Jason would want to have a certain degree of input in determining sort of the knickknacks and things that would be there around him.
He's actually he lets us do our thing, basically. He's a great collaborator because he'll give us a list of things he definitely wants, right, Kate? And he'll say, I want the posters of so-and-so, Buster Douglas, you know, all these things. I would like this and that. But otherwise, he will let us do our thing. He's very much a person who says, or kind of suggests that, you know, if somebody's good at their job, let them do it. And they'll, you know, come up probably with better stuff than he will be specific about. But there is also give and take. We will offer things and he will go, oh, that's great. Or that, you know, oh, I don't like that. Can you get this, you know? But also, he also respects the fact that a lot of the stuff we're doing is from an English or British perspective, and he doesn't quite get all the nuances sometimes. So we have to say, no, they wouldn't have that, they'd have this. Would you say that's right, Kate?
Yeah.
So he's a great collaborator, and he will let people, I mean, you know when you're going wrong, or if you're not creating what he wants, because he will come in and he will be specific. But he also comes in with great notes, and he will also add something. He's like, Jason is added value. You want that would be my phrase for him, added value. He adds value to every scene he's in. If he comes and he's standing next to the director when they're shooting a scene he's not in, he will add value. He just has that ability. I don't know how he does it, but he will add value to your work in a little subtle way, but he will do it. And that's what's great about him.
For you both, how much of this job is, because I can imagine on one end, especially when you're starting in fresh on a show like this, there's a certain degree of things that you want to build and craft and create, but at the same time, I can imagine there also has to be a bit of a sense of, okay, well, we better go shopping and sort of figure out for this and figure out for that. How do you balance sort of the two? Because, I mean, I can imagine there's a bit of a temptation to go, oh, wait, if I call so-and-so on the show I worked on 3 months ago, maybe I can get this, the XYZ, or do you have to sort of start from scratch every time you go on to a new job?
Well, you have sort of places that you can hire from,
right,
where you can go in and hire furniture and lighting and, you know, notebooks and vase, you know, all those different things. So you kind of start off there and have a wander around and see what you think might fit for different sets in there, and then you sort of build upon that in terms of then going out and doing the shopping and finding the other bits that you might be missing or looking for something that might fit better.
Or you might start the other way, and you might have a specific thing that you want to put in that set and you build around it. You know, I mean, it's in some ways, Ted was quite specific in that you have spaces where you know, like the locker room, where you have to have a certain look, and then you kind of put your own stuff into it or whatever, and you build around it. So it's a really organic process. There's no kind of set way of doing it. There's a general way of doing it, but each set can be different. Sometimes the actors want to have an input into their character or whatever. Sometimes they don't care, and they're just happy with you to provide something. So it's quite an organic process.
For you both, where does the creative payoff come from jobs like this? Because I can imagine that while on one end you want to be noticed and appreciated for the work, it's also kind of your job not to be noticed at the same time.
For me, I think it's the fact that people, you know, believe that we've created a football club. People can believe that AFC Richmond is a real club, and it's not ridiculous to think that they're playing Man City and they're halfway up the league, you know. So,
right.
But the way the club has kind of taken off online, and people have, you know, and people have come to Richmond to visit, you know, the locations and stuff. That for me is really wonderful, because I feel like I've created something that's realistic and believable. So I would say that's one of the things, really. And the other thing is watching something and it looks visually interesting or beautiful. That's really important for me. Kate?
Yeah, I mean, even just getting to the end of dressing a set and sort of looking at it and being happy with it, and simple things like that, you know, sort of just completing and being happy with it, and then seeing it on screen later on and appreciating it then too.
It's sometimes myself and Kate, because we're always working ahead, we're
right.
not with filming, so we dress a location or a set, and then the team comes in, we show it to them in the morning, and then we're all off to do the next one. So we never get to see how it's lit, or how they're acting in it, or how they're using it. So sometimes we don't see that until everybody sees that when the show goes out. You know, we don't, and so sometimes you look at it and you think, oh, that's really beautiful how they've done that, and some things are unexpected, or they've shot it in a way that you didn't expect. So it's quite a kind of, it's very collaborative process. So you do this set, but then you give it to other people to kind of film. So you have to kind of stamp your mark on it, but then you also have to let other people use it as well, and it becomes their baby. So when that you see that baby grow up and it's the show, it can be like, wow, you know, or it can be, oh, why did they do that? But it also that's a great process to be able to watch it as well, because you come to it afresh because you weren't there during the filming. So
Yeah.
it's quite a weird thing for us.
I can imagine. No, I mean, I'm just to start putting a bow on this. I'm kind of curious because this is something I always like to ask. I'm curious, sort of, was there a moment or an influence in your life that got you both into this side of the business that had sort of a light bulb go off that made you want to sort of work on this aspect of movie making? Because I mean, again, we all know it takes a village, but I mean, you know, I'm kind of curious, like, are there directing aspirations or anything else in either of your lives, or like was this sort of the avenue that you both wanted to sort of explore when it comes to sort of television and film?
For me, it was always doing this, and I know exactly the moment it was, and I've said this before in interviews, but I went to see Star Wars when I was 12. I think I was 12, but it was 77. And then I fell in love with that film. And then the next year, 1978, Harrison Ford came to make a film in my town, and it was a World War II film called Hanover Street, and they turned my town into an occupied French town with swastikas on the town hall, and they turned my grandmother's flower shop into a boulangerie. And I stood there and was amazed, and I watched, you know, tourists get off a bus to come and see Winston Churchill's grave and suddenly, you know, be shocked that there were swastikas on the town hall. And I thought, this is amazing. And people do this for a job and they get paid. And so that was a kind of thing where I realized what the job was at a very early stage. And I may not have been thinking that I could do that, but when I was older, I think that was the initial spark that set it off.
How about you, Kate?
Well, mine was when I was at school and I was doing work experience during school holidays, and I was in the camera department, sort of thinking that that's where I wanted to be. I was really enjoying that. And there was one job I was on where I could just tell they were just a bit too busy to have a trainee on. So I just went to production and said, you know, I think I might be in the way rather than helping. Is there another department that might need help? And they turned around and went, well, art department always needs help. So I'm all right then. And I think within 2 hours, I was sort of left to dress this archive room. And I just thought, this is amazing. And that was it. From the summer after I finished school, that I did my first job away from home and did 5 months. And yeah, sort of never looked back. And it's just, I love it.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, that's such an important thing too, and especially creating stuff like Ted, which obviously the universe adores so well. But I mean, you know, Kate, Paul, just thank you so much for the time today, and thank you, Paul, for giving me a story that connects Star Wars and Hanover Street. I don't think I've ever heard that line be drawn, but you just did it, and I really appreciate that, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. I went to see it at my local cinema, and my dad took me, but I think there was an age limit on the film, and he asked for a half, and I couldn't get in, so we had to drive all the way to a different town so he could get me in because I was so obsessed about seeing it. But it's quite a good film, actually. It's quite a good film, but yeah, it's such a thing in my memory of watching Harrison Ford drive around on these motorbikes shooting bullets out of guns, and I was like, and actually we're doing a World War II job at the moment, myself and Kate, and that is one of the reasons why we kind of chose to do this show after doing Ted, in that we wanted to do something different in a different period, but also I've always so wanted to do a World War II thing because of Hanover Street. So it's amazing.
Well, I love it. Kate, Paul, keep up the good work. And again, congrats on the show. And just, you know, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.